So I will hand it off now, if you'll go to the next slide, to Dr. Ellison.
Well, thank you, Melissa, and thanks to the team for inviting me to participate. While I am a PI of the Oak Tree, Oregon Clinical and Translational Research Institute, I'm presenting this really as in my day job, which is as a clinical nephrologist, because my involvement with N3C, while I do have some involvement with the program, what I'm going to talk about today is really much more has to do with my role as a clinical nephrologist and the fact that I've seen a lot of acute kidney injury when I've been on service. So if you could advance to the next slide. So in the kidney community, we sometimes feel like we're the poor stepchildren, and we don't get as much attention considering how mortal kidney disease is. But I think that the N3C pandemic has really begun to change that, and there's been a lot of recognition that kidney injury is very common in the disease, and frankly that the availability of renal replacement therapy like dialysis or continuous renal replacement therapy has been a limiting factor in treating patients across the country. These are just from 2 articles from the New York Times. One is on the left, just specifically stating that an overlooked cause is the dire need for kidney dialysis. And on the right is another article about a relative of someone whose relative was not able to get dialysis in a timely manner, and that certainly limited the prognosis for that patient. And my own personal experience being on service is that we see a huge number of patients with acute kidney injury in our COVID population here needing dialysis. Many of them are on ECMO, so it often goes together with pulmonary injury. But this is really an interesting pandemic in terms of its effects on the kidney. I just this morning searched PubMed, and since just in the last year and a half or a year, whatever, since the pandemic started, I searched for acute kidney injury and COVID-19 and came up with 273 papers already about this topic. And yet here's the problem that's concerned me and others, and I think that N3C provides a potential opportunity here. There's a recent consensus document of the COVID-19 associated acute kidney injury working group, which is a subgroup of a large kidney working group. And they report that rates of AKI vary considerably between studies, with higher rates reported in countries outside of China. And they talk about all the variability and the risk factors. And there is a sense that the risk of acute kidney injury is declining with time. It comes back to the kind of graphs that Melissa was just showing. So we're getting these piecemeal reports from all over the country, which are providing interesting data. And I think many of us have a sense of what's going on. But what we've really lacked is a cohesive database that allows us to get a realistic snapshot. And most importantly, in this consensus report, they point out that the definitions of acute kidney injury used in the various papers are completely different. There's no standardization. And so it makes it very hard to compare apples and oranges. And I think that the N3C can help us to address that. Next slide. This next slide is just intended to show very, very simply how easy it was for me to get involved. Again, even though I'm involved with N3C because CD2H is homed here at OHSU, that had really nothing to do with how I got involved in this project. I just went on the web and looked for who is looking at acute kidney injury with regard to N3C, and found Sandeep Millipatu, who I'd known a little bit through other channels, and I just sent him an email. And within a day, he said, "We would love to have you as a member of our team. Here's how to register, and we'll get you signed up for our meetings, which happen every Wednesday." And so the following Wednesday, I was able to start participating. It so happened that OHSU, we've been working on getting our data into OMOP and then uploading it into the database. But my involvement was really not preconditioned on the fact that we're uploading data into the database now, but just was because of my interest. And I think that's an important point I want to make. It's just interest that we need. Next slide. So this is the acute kidney injury team. This is part of it. There's actually more people on it than this, but I couldn't get them all on the same slide. But I think that a couple points I want to make about this group. for me, this has been an opportunity to interact with a group of real leaders around the country. I don't count myself as one. My own translational research is more in the area of electrolyte disorders and hypertension. But because of my clinical interest, I was able to reach out and then begin interacting with people really across the country who are tremendous experts on acute kidney injury. This group is led by a group at Stony Brook, which has already generated its own sort of piecemeal paper, and that's led by Sandeep and Farouk. And they're both clinical nephrologists, research nephrologists who have been outstanding in really leading this effort. But the other person on the group from Stony Brook, and this has been one of the other points I want to make, is Richard Moffat. I don't come from a background of strong informatics expertise. And I think it's useful as a tool, but I don't plan to become an informatician. Richard is an outstanding informaticist. And despite the fact that he's really busy, for example, he was co-booked at today's meeting, so he couldn't be here, but he spends an hour with us every Wednesday, and he's in the Palantir data set. And we ask him questions, and he's able to pull up things and change things and examine things in real time. And that's the most exciting thing for me. We also have representation from the NIDDK, Yvonne Schulman, who's on pretty much every call, and that's great. And then it brings together other leaders from around the country. Chirag Parikh is arguably one of the top 1 or 2 experts in the country on acute kidney injury from Johns Hopkins. And then he has another data scientist, Stephanie Hong, who's from Johns Hopkins, Fei-Fan Liu from UMass, and then me. And so we have a balance of people who are nephrology clinicians, informaticians, people from the NIH, and then Brian Bird is a cardiologist who has an intense interest in the connections between the heart and the kidney. And again, he's just someone who sent an email because he's interested in this problem and has been added to the group. So it's an exciting group to meet together with and share opinions between each other. And I can't emphasize strongly enough what an enjoyable time we have every Wednesday when we meet. And so, what we're trying to look at are I sort of alluded to before, the premises that kidney injury contributes importantly mortality and leads to long-term morbidity. Obviously, one thing we're interested in looking at eventually, this is a little more challenging, is the long COVID syndrome. And for the kidney disease, long COVID is either CKD or end-stage kidney disease. And so we're hoping to look at that. But we're looking at some not so surprising things, but these are really interesting. What will predict acute kidney injury early on? Are there regional differences in AKI incidence? That was mentioned before, but we can really look all over the country and see how AKI varies. And we think already that there are substantial differences. We're looking at whether the AKI incidence during the second surge is similar to what it was during the first surge. We have impressions, but this data will really allow us to do it. And what are the predictors of ESKD, of end-stage kidney disease after AKI? So there are lots of other things. We talk a lot about making definitions of the kidney-related syndromes that have traction and can have staying power and that align with standard definitions across the country. And I think that's one of the things that will come out of this. We don't have any data to publish yet, but we're really making good progress on getting things going. And I think this is an exciting opportunity for any clinically oriented person to get involved. And I would just encourage you to reach out to the domain team that's relevant to you and get involved, because it's really been just tremendous fun for me. And I hope I have something to add to the group, and I'd encourage you to get involved. So just pass it back to the other group members of the team, but I just wanted to express my enthusiasm for the whole project.